Across the volatile geopolitical chessboard of South Asia, we are watching as established governments are collapsing with startling speed. In Pakistan, we see streets filled with smoke and protesters demanding the removal of the political elite. In Nepal, the story is the same: massive crowds flooding city squares to overturn the existing order. These events are rarely as organic as they appear. They are often the result of a specific type of external pressure, where the law of the jungle dictates that a single superpower decides who stays in power and who is removed. The United States represents only 4% of the global population, yet it manages the political trajectory of nearly every other nation through a set of mechanics that remain hidden from public view. For developing nations, sovereignty is a precarious claim. Survival in this environment requires understanding exactly how a global power can reach inside a border and flip a government. America's primary advantage is its physical isolation. Surrounded by two oceans and bordered by two non-threatening neighbors, it remains physically untouchable by foreign militaries. This absolute security makes the U.S. a global vacuum for talent. It systematically pulls the world's most successful entrepreneurs and the vast majority of international wealth toward its own shores. Hubs like Silicon Valley are the result. These centers of innovation are powered by a global brain drain, centralizing the world's intellectual capital into a few specific American zip codes. When power and wealth are concentrated so intensely in a few hubs, those hubs become prime targets for influence. Foreign lobby groups and elite networks embed themselves within these power structures to steer U.S. policy from the inside. This centralization creates a vulnerability. By moving from legitimate lobbying into more coercive territory, intelligence-backed operations use personal leverage to ensure that leadership remains compromised. This image of Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump serves as a reminder of how elite networks can operate in the shadows of power. American influence is harvested from the global population and secured through leverage over those at the top. The second pillar of control is purely economic, rooted in the post-war requirement that the world must trade in U.S. currency. Because oil and weapons are priced in dollars, every nation must keep massive reserves of American cash. This dependency allows the U.S. to weaponize trade, cutting off access to freeze a nation's ability to import essential fuel. If a nation survives the initial freeze, institutions like the International Monetary Fund provide a different kind of pressure, offering loans that come with strict conditions that often dictate a country's internal policy for decades. Economic isolation is often more effective than traditional warfare. It forces compliance by controlling a nation's ability to function. When dollars fail, the mission moves to the shadows. This is where the Central Intelligence Agency takes over, orchestrating regime change from within. The process begins by identifying disgruntled opposition members. Millions of dollars are funneled to these individuals, creating a fracture within the government that the sitting leader cannot easily repair. The agency employs digital surveillance to monitor officials, social media manipulation to shift public opinion, and honeypots, operatives used to compromise and blackmail those who refuse to cooperate. These operations are designed to drive up inflation and spark public anger. The resulting protests are often the final stage of a multi-year intelligence operation meant to topple a leader. A few intelligence agents and a briefcase of cash can often accomplish what an entire army cannot. Ryzen towers are now using these same mechanics to build their own defenses against American influence. China's strategy relies on calculated secrecy. They hide their developments in robotics and high-tech military hardware until they have achieved full operational readiness. This map illustrates the string of pearls. By issuing loans for infrastructure that neighbors cannot repay, China legally takes control of strategic ports surrounding the Indian subcontinent without ever declaring war. While the U.S. is distracted by proxy wars, China patiently waits for the hegemon to exhaust its resources. The goal is to move on Taiwan's semiconductor industry when American forces are too overextended to intervene. China is simply turning the American game of economic leverage and proxy distraction against the U.S. itself. India sits in the middle of this struggle, vulnerable to both American regime changes on its borders and encroaching Chinese proxies. In response, India has adopted a policy of silence. Even as neighboring allies fall, New Delhi remains neutral. By refusing to take a public side, New Delhi avoids the immediate retaliation of U.S. sanctions or Chinese border aggression, while it scales its own economy. The long-term plan is visible here at the BRICS summit. India and its partners are working to build a unified non-dollar currency network to finally break the cycle of American financial control. In this environment, survival depends on mastering the silent mechanics of trade, technology, and leverage.